So what we have this afternoon are two terrific data mining analytic firms that look at who's playing games, what are they doing, how often do they repeat the game, what type of satisfaction they're having, where in the game is it successful, where it's not. Very important pieces of metrics that amplify what Sean showed you this morning and become valuable tools in anyone's arsenal when launching a game. And the other two companies that we have represented provide platforms and different types of tools to implement games for a whole host of, frankly, unusual customers and clients. So I won't steal your thunder, but I think it's a very interesting approach. So what we have is Chris Wright on your right from Game Analysis. Next to him is Phil Moore of Gamification. Rajat Pararia is actually at the end with Bunchball, and James Sampson with Interaction, kind of unusual name. So what I'm going to do is actually break this into a couple pieces. What I would like each of the companies to do is speak for a few minutes, describe what their company does, what they see going on in terms of the opportunities for the type of service or product that they provide. And then I really want to drive the conversation forward and try and unpack some of the elements that make up game development and game making for clients like Unilever, Channel 4, or let's call it National Health. So if, Chris, if you would start, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, my name's Chris Wright. I'm from Games Analytics. So we're a pure data mining and analytics company. We're founded out of, my background is game development. I've been in game publishing and development 15 years. I helped found iPlay, the mobile games publisher. And my co-founder, Mark, is from data mining. He ran a data mining company, very successful data mining company in Edinburgh, focused on the banking and retail industry. And what we did 2 years ago was we looked at this opportunity and we brought these two skills together to deliver and help games really start to understand their market. Because what's happening in the industry, it's fairly obvious, is that we're moving from a product-based industry to a sales-based industry, and a service-based industry. And when you start making that move, you have to start understanding your users, and you have to start understanding the data that's being generated from them. So we see this market in two areas. We see a metric side that is about measuring and displaying the information. So that's about understanding the core metrics like revenue, retention, ARPU, these things that help you understand how your game is performing. Metrics gives you the health of the game. It tells you what's happening in the game now, and it tells you what's happened in the game in the past. What it doesn't do is it doesn't help you understand how to change those. So it kind of gets you to that point of, okay, I now understand where I am, I now understand I have problems in my game, but I don't understand how to change, how to move those dials, how to increase retention, how to encourage people to spend more money, how to encourage longevity in the game. So we then use analytics, data mining, and techniques specifically around predictive modeling and behavioral segmentation to start to actually predict player behavior. And what that allows us to do is predict what people are going to do in the game and therefore be able to act ahead of time to change those actions. So for an example, if you're starting to see people who are going to drop out, who are struggling in the game, who are challenged, who are getting confused. Now, with metrics, what you see is you see that happening. And by the time you see it happening, it's probably too late. You've probably already confused those players. You've probably already lost them. With predictive modeling, you can actually identify those early on, and then you can do something about it. So you can start to personalize the game and focus the game on individual groups of players, different kinds of groups, to allow them to play the game in different ways. And that really allows us to build a much more powerful interaction with our consumers. And ultimately, what we're trying to get to is a point where we are interacting with the players, we're understanding how the players are playing the game, and we're being able to personalize and change the game on an individual or on a group basis. So that's where we come from. And we're looking at a whole load of different kinds of interactions, a lot of understanding of how games are changing, how people are playing the games, how they are using these Facebook games. So we've done a lot of work on Facebook games and MMOs to encourage interaction within games. One of the things we've been looking at is the time to first payment. So how do you actually encourage people to get engaged and motivated with a game? And one of the things we found within Facebook games is that if you can encourage people to actually not spend money for the first 2 or 3 weeks of playing a Facebook game, then that's usually good. The first payment, if you can get first payment to between 2 and 4 weeks into the gameplay, and you've got a really engaged set of users, but they're not actually spending money, and then they start to spend money 2 to 3 weeks in, then you find that those users are much more engaged. They've already started to enjoy the game. They've put some interaction, they've put some involvement, and they're involved in the game, and they're much more committed to the game. Now, if you then, what you need to then do is look at second payment. If you can then encourage them to start paying and spending money quickly after that, that once they've spent their first piece of money, they're going to spend again, and you start to encourage the spending of money as a structure in how they're playing, then you can be very successful. So building games that understand the psychology of how players are interacting with the game is really powerful. And we've done analysis that shows that by having games that actually have that structure, it's much more powerful. And ultimately, what we find, if you take the long view, is that actually, if you can get people to spend more time playing the game, if they enjoy the game, if they have fun with the game, then fundamentally they'll spend money. So actually, longevity of gameplay is the simplest view. Within all our predictive models, basically, if people are playing longer, they're more likely to spend money. So a lot of what we do is still based around gameplay, still based around understanding and encouraging better games. If you produce a bad game, people stop playing, they won't spend money. That's fairly obvious. So by doing that and then finding ways of encouraging that in different forms, you can actually encourage more interaction with the players.
Very good. Chris? Thanks. Okay. Phil?
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Phil Moore and I'm the CEO of Gamification. So my background is really I've done a PhD in computer science and psychology, analysing online behaviour of users, predicting it, and we're actually taking that and applying it to marketing in the online gaming world, but also amongst brands. So Gamification, we really provide direct marketing solutions for social media. So you could see us a little bit as like email marketing on steroids for Facebook, Twitter, instant messengers, and so on. And we also bring sort of game mechanics to the Facebook newsfeed. So what we do is we don't really engage too much with the games or what's happening in the game, but we're giving the games a way of like reaching their players when they're online but not playing the game, to bring them back for user retention and so on. And why we got into this space is because especially with social media, there are such rich sources of data about your users. So you've got an online game, a Facebook game. The users allows your game, which is basically an application. Facebook immediately gives you tons of data about your players. So date of birth, location, and tons of other data if you want to. And that data normally lives somewhere in a techie's database and the marketeers never get it. So we take that data, make that available to marketeers and make sure they can make decisions and send relevant content to the gamers. And what that leads to, it's more sort of engagement, you create more loyalty, adding fun, retention, which is what we heard earlier is basically gamification, but coming from a slightly different angle. We are working with big brands and online games. I wanted to say a little bit about some of the brands we work with, but based on what Graham said earlier about the kids and the schools, I thought I'll tell a little sort of example of what we're actually doing with online games for kids. We're working, for instance, with a company called Panfu in Germany. They're a little bit like Moshi Monsters over here. And what we found was kids or young guys are very keen to communicate with the brand if they like it. So they give away their contact details and for a clear value exchange. And that's very important, that you tell them what they can expect when they get messages. And what we found was especially social kudos, social currency works extremely well. Especially with kids, you're not allowed to market to them, but you can use social currency. So you can, for instance, say, okay, here's something specially for you within the next, let's say, 2 hours, 3 hours, a free virtual item you can get before your friends will get it. So a lot around social currency. Kudos works extremely well with kids. And I think that could also be sort of an addition to what Graham said earlier, a way of nudging kids to do things when, when they may be really keen on math but they don't like languages, so you could nudge them and punt them along. And similar things hold for games. You might want them to come back and play again and so on. So the communication can be used in a very efficient way to get the players to do what they actually want to do. Now I just wanted to mention a couple of sort of lessons learned. A lot of things are obvious, but just wanted to list them again. So what we found, very short calls to action work extremely well. When you traditionally see a lot of games or brands send very lengthy email newsletters, but it just doesn't work anymore with the attention spans of all the kids, and especially the younger audience. So very short calls to action. Personalization is key, that they actually feel they're valued and they get something special out of you. Context is also extremely important, that you really monitor, when is the best time to send a message, when are they most responsive, and that is especially when people are working and playing games, so don't send them anything during work. I mean, it's kind of obvious, but we still see a lot of brands making these mistakes. Then the level of gameplay, so the difficulty, as we heard earlier, it's very difficult to get right when it comes to marketing. So that's something a lot of marketeers will need to work on a lot more. I kind of mentioned it with Panfu, but the most important thing we found is the very clear value exchange, especially when data is involved. So Jason earlier mentioned, you need to make clear why you need data and so on. And we found if the value exchange is clear, you get X or you can expect something, people normally click yes and give you the data. But you need to make clear to them what they're actually getting. So the value exchange is very important. Now, there's sort of 2 points I wanted to raise, and maybe the other guys can sort of answer some of them later. One is, I'm really wondering when retention is becoming a bigger focus for online games and using some of the game mechanics to keep players longer and not just focus on the funnel and putting more people in and losing 95% by the end of the months again. So retention and what sort of gameplay or game mechanics can really do to help that part, because it's cheaper to re-engage a user you already had once than try to get new ones. And another one which I really wonder, especially with all the gaming companies, is they're so amazing, most of them, about the gameplay, but we're seeing very little when it comes to taking gameplay and putting it into marketing and combining the two. So having things in the marketing offering that then feeds back into the game. You maybe get more points, or certain levels can only be completed that way. And basically train your gamers to make sure they're receptive on other channels than just within your game.
Very good.
So,
yeah, interesting. Well, those are themes we're going to try and tease out in the remaining time. If you could just give a little bit of description, James, to what Interaction is and the Game Shaper.
Yeah. So I'm James Sampson. I'm head of product for a company called Interaction. And in a nutshell, we help brands get into social gaming or get into game-like applications in Facebook. And probably to break that down it's a big area. Is give you a bit of a story of how we got founded. We spun out of a company called ETV Productions, which is a independent television production arm. They typically focusing on commercial television, such as your Argos TV, Gala TV, game show formats, that type of thing. Very good, not shows about whales, not gritty cop dramas. It's very commercially focused content. And about a year and a half ago, they looked at obviously traditional broadcasting moving over into more 360, multi-screens, digital, all these types of aspects, and they had formats, and they wanted to know about how can they take advantage of this huge, freemium model, this microtransaction model of content, and how they could leverage that with their own formats. So they had a little bit of a war chest to investigate it, and they went to companies like Zynga and companies like Crowdstar and Wooga and all these, and said, hey, we've got all these great little formats. Why don't we work together and we can share a bit of cash together and we can have this great big party? And they went, no, thank you very much. Farmville's doing all right. We don't need, Gala TVs or any of these smaller brands in their eyes. They're quite happy to work with their own IP. So I said, okay, that's fine. So let's go find some technology out there that can, because there's some, not only was there game design and what is an appropriate game design, but these things run as businesses. As you say, they run as services. So you have to understand, you have to have the analytics teams in there that are going to make the appropriate decisions on ongoing, but also you need the commercial teams as well to understand what works, what brand, what do we need to do, what production do we need to do to be able to make this a revenue generative business ongoing. And so we went to try and find some technology that would reduce that risk a little bit, to say that we're not going to pour all this money into it just to see if it's going to work a little bit. But we couldn't find any technology. There was a few parts of that were out there. There's an company providing analytics, as you see here. There's companies providing badges and points and levels and some of those core things. But nobody out there that was really empowering full social games in a way that we could do business with. And the third part was, well, we need to find some people who do social gaming. So strangely, we're based in Vauxhall in London. Nobody really wanted to come over from San Francisco to live in Vauxhall. And the guys that were here were very much enjoying talks with Electronic Arts. So these are companies like Playfish. And it was very difficult to find people who had that experience in social gaming. So we're a bit stymied in that sense. We really want to launch something. We have a fair amount of cash. How do we get into this business? And that kind of raised a question with us, is saying if we're having trouble and we're looking really, really hard about how do we engage in the space, how do we find the knowledge about how do we make revenue out of our media properties, then most likely other people are having that same issue. So we spun the business on its head. We moved it out of the TV company. We grew it from a group of 5, 6 individuals up to the 22 that we have now, to really provide a consultancy and technology to answer all the questions we had as a potential client, as now we're in really a B2B business. And the way that comes out is in sort of three things, really. We have Game Shaper, which is a core technology that kind of takes all those attributes. If you were to take PlayGen's kind of group of cards and kind of take the mechanics out of there, and not necessarily the psychological motivators, but there are some key things like appointment dynamics. There are some key things like having an inventory, being able to have points and levels and coins, and all these types of stuff that most games share. So let's all package that up because we know they're all going to share it in some sort of API sort of level. We know we need to have analytics. We know we need to have retention marketing, all these CRM type pieces. And that's going to be common across all games. So we packaged all this up in Game Shaper. And that allows us to reduce the risk up front for companies that want to come in and build a game. It's fully tested on the cloud. We've invested all this. So brands who aren't necessarily, who have no investment in this, how are they going to get involved? So that's Game Shaper. We have Game Shaper Connected, which is our way of saying, actually, if you want to compete with big publishing houses who, like Zynga, let's say, if you've got 100 million people that are sitting there in that game, and they're spending 51 million, let's say, in a month in marketing when they launch a game, how is any other brand going to compete with that in that marketing spend? So there's very few people that can do that, and it becomes very difficult. So one way that brands can do that is to almost work together in their own consortium, so in their own co-op of game players. So if you look at a brand that's saying, I've got 2 million Facebook likes on mine, I've got 2 million Facebooks, if you can come together and then share that audience between them, then you can lower your cost per acquisition and tend to compete with this massive market that Zynga and some of the other bigger players hold. So we have a product that allows us to share audience within it. And I guess our other route is through reskinnable components. So a lot of our team are made up of either people that work with brands very well and have a large amount of marketing agency, some game people in between, and a lot of people from the online gambling industry who know very well about tapping users in and being able to get small micropayments and monitor them and retention and know your customer very well. So we produce a series of products that can be reskinned, which is very big in that market, that can then go out and quickly you put your brand on it and go for it. So I guess the fourth is when we built all these types of things, and this is kind of maybe leading into yours, your company quite well, is that there's a whole host of people outside of just brands wanting to do gaming, but businesses that want to do gaming who are saying, I want to be social, but I want to make it a little bit fun. And obviously, because we've had that core technologies in there, we've worked with game-like applications like card trading applications or avatar builders to somehow bring our knowledge of commercial monetization and marketing to give them this. And that's kind of the gamification element of our business.
All right, so a white label toolbox for different brands and companies to use in a marketing platform. Yep. All right, interesting. Why don't we talk about Bunchball and Raja, what you've done with
Sure.
U.S. television brands and your experience out in San Francisco?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Rajat Paharia. I'm the founder and chief product officer at Bunchball. I'm not the CEO, like the slide says. I'm working my way down the corporate ladder. I hope to be a junior engineer by the time I leave. That's my goal. So I started the company in 2005 as a social gaming company, actually. And we were the very first gaming company on Facebook. We were there at Facebook launch. And before that, which was in 2007, we had built this social gaming platform. We're out trying to sell it to everybody, the MySpaces, the High Fives, the Facebooks. And nobody believed us. Nobody believed that gaming was going to be the killer app on top of the social graph. And so that market was going nowhere. And in 2005 and 2006. We did get some traction in the media space where we were putting like multiplayer game lobbies on sites for Bravo TV and Lifetime and NBC Sports. And what we saw with these games that we'd put up was that we'd put the game up and the usage curve would kind of go like this, like big spike as everybody came and played, and then kind of this like long, slow trail off. We're like, well, this sucks because that means you got to keep making new games, right? And making new games takes a lot of work, and we don't want to do a lot of work. We're a lazy company and we want to scale somehow. And so then we went out and started looking in the casual gaming market to see like what are people doing to address this problem, and came upon Pogo, which is Electronic Arts' casual gaming site, mostly targeted at like 35 and up females. Same like 70 games you can find anywhere on the net, except they were like one of the stickiest sites on the internet, and they weren't releasing new content all the time. So like, how are they doing it? It was because they'd built this amazing fabric that tied all these games together. Points, levels, badges, avatars, high score tables, virtual goods, all these things that persisted these elements out of an individual game. You'd play an individual game, you'd earn points that you could then redeem for a virtual good, which then showed on your avatar in the next game you played. It was this fabric that tied all these individual game experiences together, and that's what made that whole experience so addictive and compelling, and enabled them to maintain this ongoing level of engagement and not have to be creating new content all the time. So we started building that into our platform, and then in early 2007 realized, you know what, this fabric that's tying these game experiences together can actually tie any kind of experience together. Content, community, commerce, you name it. And it's because these mechanics that game designers have used for years, the points, levels, badges, etc., are based on satisfying these fundamental human needs and desires we have for reward, status, achievement, competition, self-expression, altruism, right? And those things are universal. They cross any genders, demographics, age groups, and because of that, those fundamental motivations, you can use game mechanics to motivate any kind of behavior anywhere. So in 2007, we pivoted the company. That's the new Silicon Valley word du jour, right? We used to call it like failing and trying something else. Now it's called pivoting, right? So we pivoted into gamification, which didn't have a name back then. Nobody knew what to call it. We were calling it driving behavior and game mechanics, and I even made up this term web catalytics, because like web analytics was about analyzing behavior and catalytics was about driving it. That one didn't stick. I still liked it though. And so for years we didn't even know what to call this thing. And then what followed was what I affectionately refer to as like the 3 years of suck, right? Like nobody knew what we were talking about for 3 years. 2007, 2008, 2009, we were out there being evangelical, being very educational, trying to convince people, look, this stuff works. You can use this to motivate and drive behavior. And nobody got it. And it wasn't until 2010, last year, right, when Farmville and Foursquare exploded, and all of a sudden there was this giant consumer role model in the gamification space that everybody could look at and go, oh, now I get it, and now I can see how I can apply it to my B2C company or my B2B company. So in the intervening years, luckily we survived without being bothered by customers, and we're able to develop a really good platform, very solid technology platform, a good team, a ton of expertise, and so now our customers are like every major media company in the States, so USA, Telemundo, Bravo, Access Hollywood, NBC, Hasbro, MySpace, ABC Family, ABC, CBS Interactive. So all of them are using it. Brand advertisers are using it in marketing campaigns to drive engagement and loyalty and participation around their content. So Right Guard, Hewlett-Packard, Victoria's Secret, have all run campaigns using our platform. They're using it in call centers. LiveOps is using it with a distributed call center community, in sales incentive programs, in loyalty, Warner Brothers. So really, anywhere where there are people to be motivated, you can use game mechanics to motivate them. And this stuff it's definitely, I think it's a huge opportunity space, right? I used to work at this company called IDEO, a product design company, and one of my favorite quotes out of there was, innovation equals invention plus opportunity. So we took the existing invention of game mechanics. We didn't invent anything new. We applied it to the opportunity of, let's take it out of the gaming world and let's turn it into a web service so that anybody can take it and really quickly integrate it into their content in order to drive high-value behavior and optimize user behavior. And I think there's a huge opportunity now to take all this game thinking, not to make games and throw them into these other sectors. Let's not make advert games that are about selling travel insurance or serious games that are about shooting Twinkies in a first-person shooter. Let's take game thinking and apply it around this other content that people already have that has its own intrinsic value and drive behavior around it. And I think there's a huge opportunity in that space for all of us.
Yeah, I think, just picking up on what James and Rajat said, one of the things that was going through my mind, everyone I think in this room thinks about games as being a creative experience, much more about interaction, gameplay, the quest that was talked about this morning by David, and the narrative that goes with it. So the question I have for you two at the end, I'm a soap manufacturer, or I'm an HP. How compelling a game can I really make, and who's the audience for that? Rajat, why don't you answer that?
Yeah, I'm gonna answer by going abstract one quick level. You hear the word gamification used in two very different ways. One is the way that we use it, which is our customer has something of core intrinsic value already. You have a fan site for a TV show, The Real Housewives of Atlanta or Psych or something. You have a product, Microsoft Word. You have an expense reporting application. You have something, a community, something where people are already coming and they're getting value out of it. And if it's not providing value already, then you're kind of screwed in a number of other ways, right? If you have a news site, you don't have fresh news every day. It doesn't matter how many game mechanics or what else you layer on. Like, you don't have the core intrinsic value. So, but once you do have that, then the game mechanics is like, it's the layer that you can wrap around to say, like, how do I drive even more engagement, participation, loyalty, specific behavior around that core intrinsic value. So you're not creating something from whole cloth. It really is thinking about what motivates my users to come consume my content anyway, and how do I leverage that in order to get them to do more of the things that make me money. The other way that people often talk about gamification is the example I gave earlier. Let's make a game, a real game, whose whole purpose is to be a carrier for another message. So an advert game, so the carrier is an advertising message. A serious game, so we're trying to teach people something. And that's hard to do. I mean, you guys all know this, right? Making a good game is hard. Making a good game whose sole purpose is to be the carrier for a message that's kind of inherently uninteresting, like soap, is even harder, right? Bejeweled with soap, like who cares, right? So really what you want to be doing is figuring out, with our customers, it's what is the core business metrics you're trying to drive, and then what is the core thing that's even bringing a user here in the first place? Because you have to build on that.
Let me ask a question, though, because this is something that Chris said at the top. We're moving away from the idea of success, so to speak, of the game being monetary, what the revenues are driving. But it sounds to me somewhat what Chris and Phil do. You're measuring things in a different kind of KPIs, different kind of key performance indicators. Just staying with that, Phil, when you look at the marketing aspect, more of what Rajat's talking about, give an example of how you think what is success, I guess, for a marketing tool on a game.
I mean that really depends what your objective is, and I'll give you two examples. So on one end of the scale, we, for instance, work with Unilever, and they got products like Domestos and so on, and their
a toilet bowl cleaner. Right.
So it's a very difficult product, but the sort of the success criteria here is to get a small community, but that's very engaged. So they're looking for brand ambassadors, people they can ask, they can do R&D in. So that's what they're after.
Right. So their idea of success is to attract those users, consumers who are willing to participate in being a test camp,
but
right?
yeah, but basically the answer is it really depends what your objective
What the
is.
marketing objective is.
And with an online game, I guess, still at the end of the day, you want to make money. But you just have different stages, and I think that what was Chris mentioned, and we have the same. So can we keep a user engaged for a little while? You know, so there are different stages.
All right, now, Chris, you're recently working with Channel 4 and a program. What sort of experience? Here I've got a real-world program that I've got characters, I guess, or experience. What am I taking online and gamifying? What am I measuring, I guess?
So when we're looking at, I mean, it's interesting, when we're looking at trying to understand the analytics of how people are playing the games, what we're trying to do, traditionally the game we've been working on is a game called Beauty Town. It's been done by a Dundee developer, actually, Dynamo Games. It's very good. And with kind of your standard social games, it's all about monetization. People talk about the 2%, the people who are spending the money. And these
Which
are
2%?
Which is absolutely vital. But what we've been doing is trying to expand that view. It's not as simple as understanding that there's a 2% of people spending money and 98% of people who don't spend money. What you actually find is that these games are social, and so there's social interaction. People are being invited into the game virally, which obviously brings people in. They then form gifting groups, they form communication groups, they bind together, and they're there because of other players, because they're socializing. So we've been doing a chunk of work on social analysis, which allows us to actually better understand the player interactions within these social groups. And that allows us to put some value against the social groups. So what you'll find is that about 20% of the playing base is actually heavily involved in the monetization, in actually generating revenue, either directly through spending money and encouraging and buying virtual goods. But actually, there's another chunk of people who are just doing it. They're holding the groups together. They're gifting between groups. They're forming these social interactions. So that allows us to take a much wider view of the user base, better understand how players are actually interacting. And then you can start to form social groups, encourage bridges between different social groups. You can pull players into groups that, if they're left separated, you can better focus your gameplay at actually how people are playing, rather than just trying to focus on this kind of very binary of, I've got a bunch of people who are spending lots of money, and I've got a lot of people who aren't, that somehow I know they've got to be there, because I think I was talking to somebody at Playfish, they were talking about the oxygen. They know that this is really important, but they didn't know why or who or what. So what of that 98% is actually important? What we can start to do is really start to understand the different kinds of play mechanics and behaviors in there, so you can better focus.
I'm wondering, listening to this end of the panel with the metrics, we touched a little bit on how much information, you were saying, Phil, wanting people to participate and give information in exchange for something. What about the concern about privacy and the levels of a disclosure that go on? How much can you, Phil, how much can you track without knowing it's actually me?
So, I mean, that again depends a little bit on the channel, but it's quite scary how much you can actually track. So if someone signs up on Facebook, you can actually get quite a lot of information, and especially once you have your email address, there's services like Rapleaf out there where you can give even more information. But we've actually run quite a few tests to find out if that's even a concern for most of the users. And for instance, on Facebook, I don't know how familiar you are, but when you sign up to an application on Facebook, you get like a pop-up with a lot of different permissions. Right. So the standard one is like basic profile information, then email addresses, then things like date of birth and so on.
Different levels of disclosure.
Different levels. And we thought, okay, our gut feeling was maybe 2 or 3 we get away with.
But 2 or 3 levels.
2 or 3 levels. But we found even 4 or 5 doesn't really make a big difference. Well, you might have a drop of 1 or 2%. But
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think if you're working with brands, there's an inherent trust in that brand that they're going to do something well. If you're an independent developer launching your own IP and you're all of a sudden asking for, I can access my data anytime, you're going to see your percentage drop.
Right. So that brand association is enormously valuable.
But then I guess the question is also what a percentage on which users are dropping. Because there's a trade-off between knowing more about the users, being able to reach them, re-engage, bring them back, than just having people on
Again,
your
it's
database.
it's the right users.
So
Yep.
We've got a slightly different opinion of you on this, so I can come in. This is good. So we don't really look at the demographics. We actually avoid looking at player demographics, who they are, what age they are, what sex they are. We specifically don't look at the environment they're playing in, so we don't look at the Facebook environment or the iPhone environment. We look at purely the gameplay. And what we do is we track gameplay. We do what's called pattern analysis, which allows us to do behavioral tracking based on actually how they're playing and what they're playing. We build up behaviors based on their play mechanics, not who they are. The reason why we do this is because we're very focused on games, traditional games, in the kind of MMO space and in the Facebook space. There's going to be people who are playing an MMO game, and that one person might be playing 3 different characters. They might be playing a warrior, they might be playing a thief, they might be playing a wizard. They'll play each of those differently, and we would want to offer them and understand their mechanics and offer them different things at different points because of the way they're playing. So, and mostly, actually, we find a lot of the data isn't particularly well filled in from Facebook, but we do our best to basically ignore that. We're much more interested in how they're playing the game, what they're doing in the game, and how they're behaving within that, rather than what they are, that the fact they're a 34-year-old woman or a 12-year-old boy doesn't matter to us. What we're interested in is how they're playing the game so that we can encourage them within the gameplay.
you can only do that because you have a lot of information from a lot of data points from within the game.
Yeah.
Whereas, for instance, when we work with brands, so we're just starting a project with a gift card company, and for them, the only data we can get is the data. So their date of birth of all the friends, for instance, absolutely vital, and you wouldn't get anywhere. But I think the bottom line is you just need data and detect the right patterns.
Absolutely. I mean, we spend a lot of time, we collect a huge amount of in-game event data, and it's very specifically focused on understanding the behavior of the games.
Yeah, but Chris, your user, client, customer is oftentimes the game developer.
Game developers and publishers, yes.
Right, so they're keen to understand the game flow, the user experience, the journey that the player is going through. You're going through, James, slightly different approach because your clients are really brands, as you say. What are they looking for? Sort of what Phil was describing with the greeting card company. What's a good outcome for a client for you?
I think success is just measured on a brand by brand basis. I don't think there's any silver bullet of what's a successful app. Obviously, different people have different budgets to acquire users and have different expectations about what would be successful for them. So for Purple Ronnie, let's say, which is one of our clients, they're a card brand, a very high-selling brand.
It's an online gift card?
It's an online gift card
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Okay.
It's also an offline gift card. You can
Okay.
go to whatever your cards, and it's a little sort of stick figure, and they say funny poems, and that's the brand. It's a great, very big UK brand. And they had a number of stuff that they were trying out digitally. They were having a lot of sort of marketing pieces where you could go online and you could create your own card, and you can design it, and you can kind of send that to friends and things. And for them, it was, that's pretty cool, but maybe we can do something more socially. They were doing this off canvas. They wanted to kind of tie it in socially. They came to us. And the two things we looked at it were, probably from a gamification point of view, it was a sort of a one-step thing. They created the card, they send it off, and that was it. There was no re-engagement. We talked about retention.
Right.
And the level of personalization, it was, well, I'm just kind of picking these things together to send my message, and there it is. And I thought we could play around with those two things. And so for us, it was about, well, a Ronnie is a character, it's a stick figure. Let's make the whole thing about that, and let's create a retentional space around people build their Ronnie, they can buy avatar items, they can personalize it. Then it becomes them sending a message as a poem. So the actual message isn't a card that they've designed, it's actually just a poem, but to read it, you have to go in and see that character. That then means that because of Facebook, we are allowed to tease people in with the value sort of thing, saying, come on in, you can build your own character, you like the brand, we're leveraging people that know this brand already, so you can create your own one, and then they'll handily hand over their email address for that right. Because they're going to get value out of that, because not only because we're going to remind them, we're going to say, hey, you're friends with so-and-so, it's their birthday.
And
so,
how successful would something like that be?
We took we took them from 200 known email addresses on their digital platform to over 20,000 known email addresses. at a relatively small development time of about 4 weeks.
Right.
So for them, that's a huge success. I mean, that's completely changed the way that they know their customers and can market to their customers.
Sure, sure.
And it also allowed them to deliver, because there was no barriers to that, friends and the connections to it, to different markets that they hadn't been exposed to.
All right, Rajat, you're operating in the U.S. It's a much bigger market, a much deeper, bigger pool. These guys are interested in, a small number, but the right ones. And you and I were speaking about a game around Adobe, trying to get their user base activated. How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a really interesting use case. I'll use a different example, but the same kind of sector. So Microsoft, this is something that's out there today. So Microsoft has the Office suite, right? Very complex piece of software. I mean, I'm an engineer. I probably know how to use like 10% of Microsoft Word, if that.
I feel better now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure everybody in the room knows like a really good 10%, but the problem is we all use a different 10%. So it's not like there's a clear 90 that they can cut out and then offer Microsoft Word Lite. It just wouldn't work. But at the same time, Google Docs and all this other stuff is coming online, and it's threatening this $15 billion a year franchise that Microsoft has. So it's imperative upon them to, number one, get people understanding all the functionality available across the suite, and then number two, developing mastery across the suite, right? So how do they do this? Well, in the past, they've just put up all this tutorial content online or in the app, and nobody looks at it, nobody touches it. It's not really moving the needle whatsoever. So then the guys at Office Labs came up with this idea to gamify the experience, and so they built this plugin called Ribbon Hero, like Guitar Hero for the Microsoft Ribbon. And so you get points for everyday activity that you're doing, like the first time you use a new function. But then each app, so PowerPoint, Word, OneNote, and Excel, had its own game. And so like my PowerPoint achievement, I click on the thing, and it would show me that, and I'd have a little progress bar that showed me how many points out of the total number that I could earn, and then all these missions that I could take. So take the animation mission, and the animation mission is, here's what the slide looks like before, and the hummingbird's up here, make them animate down here, and you can get 12 points if you do the mission in the minimal number of steps. And then you try and do the mission. If you need hints, you get them. If you complete it, like balloons and cheers and all this kind of stuff, and cha-ching sounds because you earned points, and then you can share it on Facebook and tell all your friends that you're kicking ass at PowerPoint, right? So they built all this gamification.
Something to really boast about, I know. Yeah.
It's like a glorified paperclip.
Yeah.
Well, I'm getting to the paperclip. Okay, so they did this thing, and anecdotally, they haven't released like official results, but anecdotally, like people were spending time in this thing in the 3 minutes, 5 minutes between meetings, learning more about these tools that they use every day that they should be developing mastery on, right, and enjoying the experience too. So actually getting people to go through this normally dry tutorial content by framing it the right way. So then they actually invested even more money, and they put out Ribbon Hero 2. So search on this stuff and download Ribbon Hero 2, because Ribbon Hero 2 I think is brilliant. So what they've done is they said, okay, now we're going to go to the next level. We're going to integrate all this stuff into a story. Because it has there's a distinct amount of tutorial content, we can build a story with a narrative arc around it. And the story is about Clippy.
There you go.
So
right.
10 years ago, Clippy got fired from Microsoft, and he's been living in his mother's basement ever since. And now she's kicking him out. And so now you have to do all these tasks to help Clippy find a job. The very first task you have to do is take his resume and turn it from Comic Sans into Calibri, right, so that he can actually send it out and not get laughed at. And then there's this whole sequence of tasks that every time you do one of these tasks, it moves the narrative forward. So you get to find out what happens next in the story. And as opposed to having individual siloed games for each product, the story ties all of them together. The first task is Word, the next one's Excel, then PowerPoint, then OneNote. So you've got to learn everything.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt, but yeah. I think we all know where that's going all the way to graduating in PowerPoint. I know with Nike Plus, you reach a certain level, and Lance Armstrong comes on and gives you encouragement. So there's a lot of tie-ins with the brand, with rewards for whatever levels that you're trying to achieve. I'm curious, just in all the discussion we've been having, you're talking a lot about social games. You talk about working with Facebook or Zynga. Is there a sense that the entire world, all of what you're working on, is all about social network environments? What about different platforms or different? Can what you do be used in console games, in mobile? James, what's your sense?
Yeah, I mean, for us, I mean, we're tending to go where the users are in that sense. So Facebook at the moment has a large amount of users for the particular demographics that we're building our brands around. Not so if you're a big Russian brand, there's going to be a completely different network there, or if you're into other niche markets such as the Netherlands and you're on Hives and all these types of stuff. So your choice of platform and channel is going to be different depending on your brand.
Right.
Obviously, Facebook is the biggest, and then you're looking at your other markets of your mobile markets to move into there. But for us, as a company that tends to build asynchronous, social-based applications, dip in, dip out stuff, for us, console is just not something that we're looking at, really. That's not to say that some of the techniques that we use, from virtual goods and retention mechanics, can be applied back into console. But in terms of our skill sets, it's much easier to move down into to smaller elements and smaller markets. Now, that's changing on a day-to-day basis. Facebook's the landscape of commercial sense, and Facebook's changed. Google Plus is coming out, and there's rumors of from a games dashboard there with who knows what sort of commercial terms will be there. And obviously, when you look at we saw today, the top 8-10 apps on Android and iPhone are all going to be freemium-based games. So
exactly.
Understanding the commercial models of games, I think applies to whatever platform there are, as long as the users are there. And if you have a viral channel that's able to propagate it, then even better. So.
Chris, you're a games veteran all the way back from the 64-bit machines. What do you see? Where you play, is it mostly in large game developers, or can the audience also be on Facebook?
No, I mean, we're definitely focused across the whole breadth. I mean, we're not... The big split here is the console space compared to... and it's really a business model thing. So the ability to do free-to-play, be it MMOs, casual MMOs, Facebook games, social games, iOS games, and the mobile space, that is incredibly powerful. That business model is fantastic. It's so flexible in that you can start to offer different kinds of charging mechanisms to different users, so people can spend the amount of money they want to spend, they can enjoy the experience ahead of spending money. There is going to be evolutions of that as we start to understand better how the psychology works, but the flexibility and the ability to change and evolve the content based on a service is just fantastic. Now, the challenge we have in the digital space is we have that kind of content, and then the console, the more traditional consoles, which are much more rigid, much more structured. They're still trying to sell box products. They're still trying to upsell a very large, expensive game to users before they even play it. So you have to spend £40 before you can actually play the game. That market is really struggling, and it's not that surprising. Where we're seeing huge success is that transition as companies move and reposition their business from this product-based industry to a service-based industry and into these new business models. And that's fantastic. So social is just, from our perspective, it's just one of the many types of platforms that the games that provide a service sit on, and we provide the analytics across those. So we're doing a lot of work in the MMO space, especially as MMOs become free-to-play. We're doing a lot of space in the casual MMO space, which I think is going to be incredibly powerful. You start looking at people like Big Point and the kinds of games they're doing, which are much more traditional type games, but they have a lot of the mechanics from the social space, so they're less casual, but they have the same business models, and those types of games I think are going to grow. I think you're going to see a big push as people start to build more complex games, starting to hit into the more game player kind of centric, rather than the Facebook has been very light interaction. That's a huge change in the market.
All right, interesting. So on one end, we have the platforms or the pieces that you can either rent or buy, used by everyone from Microsoft, Hewlett-Packard to Coronation Street. And on the other end, we have the ability to analyze, to data mine, to understand who the customers and the players are out there. I want to just open this up. If there are questions or thoughts that you have that you want to ask these guys, my feeling is the whole arc of what we're seeing with gamification earlier with Cam, and obviously what you're seeing here, is that whatever is called a game, it's changing. And it's changing quite dramatically as the tools become available. Out in the back, can we have a...
Hi there, my name's Robert. I'm just wondering about the advertising side of things. Like, if you think there's a really popular game doing really well, maybe in Facebook or something, do you think advertisers will maybe capitalise on it?
in traditional advertising sense, or
Yeah, just generally, like just maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely happening. So if you look at, there's a lot of different ways that advertisers, in terms of getting their product out to users, it can happen. You have what we call the offer walls, where if you want to, as a lead generation, say, I'm going to get a little bit of game currency, and you're going to sign up for Love Film, and you're going to get 100 coins for that.
Yeah.
So that's one way of doing it.
Do you think maybe it's a fine line, like users might be put off if there's adverts popping up in their game, and that might be.
Well,
I'm
sorry, when you say ads, you mean advertisers, you mean like an actual brand
Not really
ad.
a pop-up, but it could be like a graphical bit of content in the game. It could be like.
You can already buy like Coca-Cola bottles or Pepsi
Yeah,
within games.
They
So
get their permission, they put it in the game, they make some money from it.
But does it make it seem more realistic if I'm in a game and
It's that as well, yeah, that as well.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to buy a virtual car, so there's a good social game called Car City by Cygames, I think it is, and they've done a number of different advertising deals about product placement of different cars, and you can go in, you can see the new models, and they have certain qualities, and so the whole, so the item itself becomes emotionally attached. It gets you better in the game.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. So there's a point that says the gamification for an advertiser is to win points. Maybe a little bit older used to collect box tops off cereals and then send them in for whatever the prize was. But in this case, you're collecting whatever the trail of activities in order to win something as part of the deal.
Sorry, I've just thought of something else. Do you think maybe like advertisers could use, how like you win things in a game, like you get tokens. Like maybe if they were to use a game to advertise, you could collect so many coins within the game, and they'd sort of register that you've collected so much, and you get a free can of juice at the shop or something like that. So they're kind of selling a product through the game plus getting recognised.
Yeah, I mean, those types of things are already happening. I think there's a real grey area when you're producing games that obviously are monetized around virtual goods, and the ability to redeem stuff out of that. In a way that I could somehow, it really gets into a gray area around, certainly on Facebook legislation, but in terms of money laundering and all that type of element, when I can put money in and get something of value and sell that and stuff. So you have to be really careful around redemption. I think that typically what's happening now is that you can enter sweepstakes and lotteries, so I can do a certain amount, get to a certain level in the game, I can then get my name in a hat, and I can get drawn out, and hey, I've won a bunch of brand X or brand Y, and that's typically what's happening now. Off of Facebook and in different countries, you're probably working with a lot of different kind of redemption and point features, and you can.
We're stepping into new legal territory. Yes.
James Ben's Future. First, I have two questions. First of all, I want Rajat to say that he made up Ribbon Hero, and it's definitely not real. And secondly, I think the panel's crossing streams a little between the themes of gamification and the themes of free-to-play. And I believe that the console manufacturers and Steam have done a pretty good job at gamification with trophies and achievements. And I wonder if the panel feel that games developers could make better use of those elements within conventional games on conventional consoles, and what lessons specifically they could learn from experiences on Facebook.
All right, very good. Rajat?
I didn't make it up. It's completely real.
Yeah,
check it out. Download it. Try it. It's actually really fun.
it means we need to actually learn more about the American mindset.
And then for the second part of the question, yeah, I mean, like Xbox Live and Steam and all these other, Apple's Game Center, all these guys providing all this gamification infrastructure. They're providing some basic parts, but I absolutely think, every console game out there should be leveraging this stuff if they're not already. I'd be curious to hear what you guys think.
Yeah, I think one of the benefits of badges and achievements in the social space is allowing that kind of retentional back in. So I can say, hey, I've done that. And then the beauty of being online and outside of a console is that I can see that in different times. So I'm going into work, so let's say I load up my Xbox Live and I see them last night that so-and-so unlocked a certain achievement, something like that. Then I have to wait 8-10 hours for that idea to come back into before I can go back home and then pick that up again and go, I'm going to beat him. So, so it's finding ways of of whether it be on mobile, whether it be on console, or whether it be on PC, that you can tie that whole experience in so that all the achievements and stuff become part of my thread of life and all my connections, so that wherever I am, I can dip back into that property, whether it be on console, mobile, or social. I think that's the beauty of what social games have taught us, is that you're constantly getting little things. And you might be at work. It only takes 5 minutes to go back in and harvest that, or do this and do that, accept that gift. But it's constantly keeping that as part of our habitual lives of playing, and increases the retention of play. So.
I think a big advantage, though, what all the online games have towards or against the consoles is they can adapt things more in real time. So that's what we do in the marketing world, because normally things never pan out the way you want them to, especially with rewards, points, and it's a very fine balance. So they can constantly tweak, and I think they have a huge advantage, which makes it very difficult if you just build a product and you don't really know how it's going to pan out on a large scale.
It's also the fact that it's never been motivational to do it. So if you build a console game and you release it, you get your money. And to be honest, they play it, and if they don't play it, if they don't keep on playing it, then to be honest, you'll get them to buy the next game. So there is with the move to social and to service-based games, you are motivated, very motivated about ARPU and revenue and retention. That's something you really want to drive. With traditional console product-based, it's not so important. You've already sold the product, you've already got your money, and you can then move on to producing the next one. And to some extent, you want them to stop playing it because you want them to buy the next game and the next game and the next game. So it's a change in business model, and it's a change in the kinds of products we're doing, from going from this product to service, that really drives you to want to look at the gamification type things and those mechanics which are driving retention, that keeps people playing the game rather than buying the next product.
I heard something earlier that I think is a little contradictory. We talk a bit about the marketing mantra of awareness, engagement, retention, but if it's a game around a marketing campaign, what kind of retention would I have? In other words, the campaign runs its course, it achieves whatever awareness or usage or footfall into the store for trial. When you talk about retention, James, what do you mean in that context?
I think it's really difficult in that example of traditional advert gaming, which would be campaign-based. I've created some sort of piece of content around a big brand message. We're going to get to play there, and then 6 months later, I'm expecting them to still be firing this thing against a very short, very quick. Some of them are very big production, some are low production. I think to expect people to, even with a large amount of gamification, to play that for 6 months and to consume that message, I think you'd be crazy. I think where you can look at it is saying, from a brand, saying, I've got a connection with this person, whether it be soap or drinks or whatever, and I'm going to be delivering to them a number of different messages.
Oh, I see. So it's really the lifetime of that customer.
Yeah, and maintaining relationship with them, that they can see their progress with that relation. They can build that. I think that's one way of using gamification. But I think social games are different in the sense that you're not delivering a small message. What you're delivering is an emotional experience around that brand that's fitting. And sometimes it doesn't work. I would not build a game around a 6 month game with heavy investment around soap. It just doesn't make sense. But if it's a character that I've read in a book, or if it's a narrative or a character or an experience that lives in some other format, and you want to say, how am I going to reuse this in a social format and somehow create a revenue stream from that, then yes. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions for these guys? You have one right back there.
Yeah, my question is a version of the how many tricks does this pony have up its sleeve? And that question comes from somebody who teaches managers about human behavior at a business school. And one of the things that you sort of learn when you teach the subject matter is that there are underlying patterns in psychology. But what makes any set of tricks works is not those psychological principles. It's the novelty of how you use them. And that novelty often and very quickly wears off when people realize that it is a trick and not actually just satisfying.
Right. How to reinvent. Yes. So but yeah.
How much? I get the feeling that the gamification has at the end of the deal sort of one major trick, and that when that trick is played, the variations in the theme get dry very quickly.
Well, first thing, find me a pony that has sleeves, and I'll be right there. So, what's your thought?
Yeah, because I think it perfectly right. When we sort of look at mini games or having forums online that are sort of gamified, they're part of the overall strategy of the brand. So you have a lot of parts. So you start off with potentially even traditional advertisement. You might put something on the physical product.
So it's part of a bigger mix.
And it's part of the mix, but it just gives, like for instance, we've done a campaign with the Mirror where they had something in the paper and then the same thing was reflected online. And it's just adding to the mix, showing like traditional brand values, but also showing the customers that the brand is doing something new, they're going with time, and just engaging with the broader sort of user base. But yeah, I totally agree with you.
I think it's an element of know your customer. I don't think if you sit back and go, the whole world's a bunch of sheep, and as long as I give them a badge, they're going to do what I'm think. If you're not caring about your customer and caring about the emotional connection it has with you, then yeah, it's going to be a one-trick pony. People are going to say, I got that badge, but what does it really mean, right, and go away. So it's around, they're tools, but they're used in a much bigger strategy, in a much more connective strategy with the customer.
And I would also emphasize, I think that there are only really 5 colors. It's how you mix them together that obviously makes the magic of a painting. And I think what we're seeing is a toolbox that will always be expanding, but this is the way in which they're being used now. And I find this kind of an interesting transformation. We'll see what happens over the next year or so. I want to thank you for spending the hour with us, giving us your thoughts on the topic.